If reality is one infinite, unbound consciousness, we are forced to explain how isolated, limited, and largely ignorant human minds can possibly exist. Solving this requires moving past the poetic metaphors usually associated with mysticism. We need to treat consciousness as a formal, logically consistent topological model. This is the Pratyabhijna Hridayam, a 20-aphorism manual compiled in the 11th century by Kshemaraja. It serves as a rigorous technical guide for this specific ontological system. Kshemaraja provides a mechanical blueprint mapping the precise geometric steps of how an infinite field degrades into a finite node, and the exact protocol required to reverse that process. The system builds upon a foundational axiom in its first aphorism. The root of all existence is an unmanifest state, an integrated whole functioning as an infinite void. The text labels this foundation Citi, the universal, infinite consciousness that serves as the base variable for the mind principle. Under the principle of svatantra, or absolute self-determination, Citi projects the universe outward from within itself. The cosmos functions as a top-down conscious event, rather than a bottom-up assembly of matter. Because the universe is inherently a mental projection, the physical laws and constraints we experience daily are actually architectural features of a conscious system. Aphorism 4 bridges the gap between the unmanifest void and the physical world we perceive. It introduces a precise operating metaphor. Divine consciousness acts as the light source, illuminated object, and screen. It projects the physical universe upon its own surface. This follows a highly structured cosmic ideation, appearing as a pre-existing scroll unfurling across the screen of consciousness. This creates a non-dualistic environment. Everything exists entirely within this singular field. There is no outside reality. If the entire physical cosmos is projected onto the screen of Citi, individual human minds follow the same logic. We are localized, constrained projections rendering on that exact same canvas. Aphorism 5 details the exact geometric mechanism that creates these localized minds. Through a process called semcoca, or contraction, the infinite reality geographically condenses, restricting its infinite radius down to a localized focal point called the Mahabindu. This contraction triggers a profound structural shift, where universal Citi degrades into Chittam, the localized human mind. The text uses a prism analogy. Pure consciousness passes through this localized point, fracturing into a multi-layered spectrum of thoughts and sensory inputs. These layers wrap tightly around the central node of awareness, forming a dense mental world that blocks the integrated white light. The human mind exists as a contracted, mathematically constrained degradation of the universe itself. The direct consequence of this severe contraction is the creation of the ordinary human perspective. The text classifies this state as the Maya Pramata, a knower whose very perception is structurally restricted by the parameters of their own contraction. Forcing an infinite field through a centralized point triggers a simultaneous restriction of power and the obscuration of absolute knowledge. This customized mental world acts as a literal veil, blinding the subject to the wider, unbroken field of Citi that contains them. The resulting accumulation of karma functions as a secondary constricting agent, creating a localized feedback loop that binds the individual to their own projected illusion. Bondage is a strict structural consequence of operating from a heavily centralized, obscured node of consciousness. If we share a source consciousness, Aphorism 3 explains why we experience such a fragmented and subjective reality. We can map the architecture of human perception using the geometry of a circle and its center. Individualized minds, those constricted nodes, exist structurally as unique points stationed strictly on the circumference of this circle. Positioning on the edge forces a constricted view. Your specific location dictates a unique angle to every other point, generating conflicting realities. A view from the center changes everything. From here, all circumference points are perceived symmetrically and simultaneously, without distortion. The illusion of a fragmented universe is a matter of topological positioning. We perceive insurmountable differences because our awareness is stationed on the constricted edge rather than anchored in the integrated center. This leads to a rigorously logical conclusion. If the individual mind is a contracted state of universal consciousness, liberation is a purely mechanical, geometric reversal. Self-realization involves the systematic attenuation and eventual dissolution of the centralized I consciousness. As this focal point dissolves, the mind structurally expands and decentralizes. This process focuses entirely on removing the structural constrictions that block native omniscience rather than the acquisition of new data. In this model, enlightenment is the act of decentralization, allowing the contracted node to organically revert to the unbounded plane. This geometric reversal results in the Shiva Pramata, the knower who has merged back into universal consciousness. The enlightened individual maintains their integration with the physical universe, continuing to participate in manifestation from an expanded vantage point. Their mechanism of perception shifts to seeing the physical world and mental phenomena as differentiated expressions of their own core reality. The liberated individual identifies directly with the screen itself, seeing past the isolated images being projected upon it. The Pratyabhijna Hridayam offers a revolutionary ontology where the physical universe and the spiritual void are structurally identical, united by the geometry of a single infinite mind.